My dad has Alzheimer's. He keeps saying my mom and I are fake monsters. What do I do? He's called the police 99 times. Each time demanding they kill us. His son and me, the police, are more exasperated than we are. Today my dad tried to peel off our skin to see if we were monsters. I scrolled through a trending post, and the comment section was full of people enjoying the drama. I too joined the fun and commented, I specialize in Alzheimer's. Bring your dad to me for treatment. It wasn't until the patient showed up, looking at me with fear and despair, that things got chilling. My real son has a mole on his neck. This son doesn't. My wife used to throw up at the smell of cilantro. Now she eats it every day. They're fakes. But they say I have Alzheimer's. And the police won't arrest them, doctor. Please save me. A shiver ran down my spine. The old man's memory was so sharp. His logic so clear and well-reasoned. He didn't seem sick at all. I promptly requested a home visit. Upon entering the house, the old man's son, Adrian Vickers, opened the door, a wide smile on his face. Dr. Sloan, please come in. Have a seat. I'll get you some tea. At that moment, old Mr. Vickers tightly clutched my sleeve, pointing at Adrian's legs. Look at the way he walks. There's clearly something wrong, he whispered urgently. But my son used to be on the track team. His legs were perfectly fine. My gaze followed Adrian. He did indeed walk with a slight limp, as if he'd been injured. Old Mrs. Vickers. Maria Vickers walked out, her wrinkled face furrowed with concern. Can't you ever just calm down, old man? Our son was in a car accident last year and injured his leg. You know that, don't you? Have you forgotten again? She then turned to me, sighing. It's fine, he's old and confused. He mixes up his memories. Don't take it seriously, old Mr. Vickers eyed his wife suspiciously, about to say something when Adrian emerged from the kitchen. His tone was tired and resigned. Dad, what nonsense are you telling the doctor? Now, if I weren't your son, wouldn't the police investigate? Wouldn't they arrest me? Old Mr. Vickers simmered down. I turned to Maria. Mrs. Vickers, besides your husband's illness, has your family always had a good relationship? Maria nodded vigorously, her eyes filled with nostalgia. Before Patrick got sick, everyone knew how close my husband and I were. We've been married 50 years, a golden anniversary. Look, we still wear our gold rings. She held out her hand. When our son got married, Patrick handled everything himself. We were so happy as a family. I glanced at her ring. It was clearly an old style, worn for a long time, heavily abraded. So, does Mr. Vickers also suspect his daughter-in-law is a fake? She shook her head. No. He only says my son and I are monsters. But if we were monsters, wouldn't our daughter-in-law know? He's just old and has become a lunatic. A certain word seemed to suddenly provoke old Mr. Vickers. He instantly became agitated. Don't listen to her, Dr. Sloan. These two monsters must have peeled off my wife's and son's skin, put it on, and now they're keeping watch over me, wanting to devour me whole. I'm not sick at all, but they keep telling you I'm crazy and demented. They just want to kill me, Dr. Sloan. You must save me. The more he spoke, the more agitated he became, his chest heaving violently. Adrian and Maria stepped forward simultaneously, reaching out to support him. Don't touch me, he roared, batting away their hands, his eyes filled with pure terror and revulsion. You skin-stealing monsters. Stay away from me. I quickly moved to calm old Mr. Vickers, glancing at the mother and son's weary, helpless faces. Feeling the timing was wrong, I escorted old Mr. Vickers back to his room before concluding the family visit. As I was about to head downstairs, the iron gate next door creaked open slightly. Old man poked half his body out, beckoned to me, and whispered, You're the doctor for the Vickers family, right? Is Patrick acting up again? My heart stirred. Sir, are you well acquainted with Mr. Vickers? Acquainted? How could I not be acquainted? We've been neighbors for decades. We watched Adrian grow from a little tyke to a young man. He used to call me uncle. Sigh, they're all good people. But Patrick's been muddled these past 2 years. He doesn't even recognize his own wife and son anymore. Such a tragedy. My eyes flickered. The old man's family, have their faces always looked like this? The neighbor's tone was very certain. Exactly like this, never changed. If their faces changed, how could the neighbors not notice? Patrick used to be quite superstitious, always burning incense and praying. Now that he's old, he tells everyone his wife and son are skin-peeling monsters. I suspect he's gone mad. Doctor, you can't believe a word he says. Quickly pressed for more information. Have you noticed any changes in their habits or personalities? The mother and son, compared to before. The neighbor frowned, trying hard to recall. Patrick used to always tell us that Adrian fell into an abandoned bunker when he was little and became terrified of the dark ever since. We all knew he had to sleep with a night light on, and the hallway lights in their house stayed on all night, but for the past year or so, their hallway lights haven't been on much. Sometimes I even see Adrian taking out the trash at night, and he's not afraid of the dark stairwell at all. He can walk in the dark, but he's 40 now, so it's normal for the kid to have grown a backbone. Armed with this information, I quickly thanked the neighbor and headed straight to the hospital. In the electronic archives, I searched for Adrian Vickers' file. Finally, I found a pediatric emergency record from over 30 years ago. Patient Adrian Vickers, age 7. Chief complaint: fell into a hole, excessively frightened, with minor abrasions. Treatment: wound cleaning and bandaging. Diagnosed with nyctophobia, fear of darkness. Prone to panic attacks and stress trauma. I was deep in thought. There aren't two identical wives and sons in the world. The family members had been swapped, and the police had been called 99 times. They couldn't possibly ignore it, and it couldn't be plastic surgery. Everyone gets surgery to look younger and better. Who would get surgery to look older, and for what purpose? But then again, could Adrian's extreme fear of the dark, a stress disorder that hadn't been cured in decades, suddenly disappear? Old Mr. Vickers' thinking was clear, and he spoke factually, not like someone with Alzheimer's out instantly multiplied. I couldn't understand what was going on. Just then I received a call from Adrian. His voice was anxious. Doctor Sloan, my dad has locked us out of the house, he insists. We're skin-peeling monsters who came to harm him. Please help us. My dad gets so agitated, so crazy. I'm really afraid his condition will worsen, and he'll kill all of us. Through the phone I could still hear old Mr. Vickers' agitated shouts and curses. 20 minutes later I arrived at their house. Old Mrs. Vickers. Maria sat in the hallway, her back hunched, sighing deeply. Adrian stood at the door looking at me as if I were his savior. Dr. Sloan, please tell my dad right away that he's just confused from his illness. Tell him to take his medicine and stop making a fuss. Beside him stood a young woman with a slightly rounded belly, presumably his wife. I knocked on the door. Mr. Vickers, it's me, Dr. Sloan. The door was silent for a moment, then came the sound of unlocking. The door opened a crack, revealing Mr. Vickers's old and weary face. Seeing it was indeed me, he opened the door completely. He pulled me into the house, quickly closed the door, and double-locked it. Doctor. Look, he grinned, showing his teeth. These monsters can't get in now. From now on I won't let them into my house again. His face even showed a hint of childlike triumph. I looked at him. My heart heavy. Alzheimer's can cause memory confusion and difficulty recognizing loved ones, but it doesn't typically trigger such concrete, targeted paranoid delusions against specific family members. What exactly was going on with this family, Mr. Vickers? Shall we talk? I helped him to the sofa. He clutched my arm tightly. Doctor, I'm not sick, truly not sick. I know. I patted his hand, my voice gently reassuring. Can you tell me why you hung that photo frame face down? I pointed to the photo frame by the TV cabinet. I had noticed it the first time I came. The frame was turned over the photo, facing the wall. It was a very strange thing, yet in this seemingly harmonious family, no one had seemed bothered by it. Old Mr. Vickers's eyes became hazy and fearful. That photo, it's wrong. Pointed at the little boy in the photo. My Adrian, he has a small red birthmark behind his ear. This child in the photo doesn't, and neither does the son now. The photo must be fake, so I have to cover it up. His accusation, once again focused on extremely subtle physiological characteristics that outsiders could not possibly notice. Mr. Vickers, I narrowed my eyes, softening my voice. When did you start feeling like something was wrong with them? Old Mr. Vickers's breathing suddenly quickened. A year ago, after that car accident. The mother and son were in a car accident together. They stayed in the hospital for a few days. I brought them home, but their eyes looked at me coldly. We've relied on each other for decades. How could their eyes look so unfamiliar to me? One is my wife, one is my son. You might not notice, but I did. My heart gave a sudden jolt. Old Mr. Vickers had always said his son's legs were fine, but his wife said Adrian's leg was injured in a car accident. Now old Mr. Vickers himself was saying his son had been in a car accident. His memory was indeed confused, but his details were too precise, not consistent with Alzheimer's. I stood up and opened the door, letting the three outside come in. Mrs. Vickers, Mr. Vickers, I said, my voice serious. Given Mr. Vickers' current mental state and his repeated emphasis on specific differences, I strongly suggest you undergo a DNA paternity test. After the blood test, whether he has Alzheimer's or not, he won't say you're fakes anymore. A DNA test. Adrian's face was a mixture of absurdity and anger. Dr. Sloan, what do you mean by this? Do I really have to prove to my dad that I'm his son? This is ridiculous. Old Mr. Vickers, however, found it plausible. Do it. I agree. Old Mrs. Vickers Maria sighed heavily and pulled a folded piece of paper from her coat pocket. Dr. Sloan, I've already done a DNA test. The old man already overthinks things, and I was afraid he'd die of anger if he knew I did this, so I never brought it out. I looked down at the report. It was indeed a DNA identification report issued by a third-party testing agency, and the conclusion was clear as day. It supports the existence of a biological parent-child relationship between Patrick Vickers and Adrian Vickers. Dad, I am your son, the real deal, no fakes. You see now. Adrian handed the report to old Mr. Vickers. Old Mr. Vickers snatched the report, his cloudy eyes fixed on the lines of text. At first there was confusion, then a profound fear and despair crept onto his face. Impossible. This is impossible. He violently tore the report to shreds, scattering them everywhere. Fake. This test is fake. You're all ganging up to trick me. Monsters, you monsters. I peeled off my wife's and son's skin, and now you want to fool me with this flimsy paper. He agitatedly pointed at Maria. My wife used to throw up at the smell of cilantro, but you can't go a meal without it. Don't tell me you suddenly developed a taste for it after 70 years of hating it. Then he pointed at Adrian. My son's legs are perfectly fine, and he has a red birthmark behind his ear. You this monster. Don't. You can't fool me. Do it again. I want another test. I quickly tried to calm him. Then let's do it again. I know a very reputable testing center. I can help expedite it, and we'll get the results quickly. Adrian and Maria almost simultaneously objected. No. Maria's face darkened slightly. Dr. Sloan, we asked you to help cure my husband, to stop him from being so confused, not to stir up trouble. DNA test costs 4 or 5,000. Our family isn't rolling in gold bricks. One test is enough. Why do another? Or do you also think we're fakes? Is your mind as muddled as the old man's? Maria's accusation made the room go still. I looked at her for several seconds before answering. No, Mrs. Vickers. I don't think you're monsters. I think your husband may be telling the truth about something, and I want to find out what it is. Adrian's expression changed. The friendly concern he'd worn since my first visit disappeared for half a second, replaced by something much harder. Then he smiled again. Dr. Sloan, you're letting an old man's paranoia drag you into this. Perhaps, I replied, which is why another DNA test should settle the matter. Maria's fingers tightened around her coat. We already proved he's Adrian's father. You proved that this man is biologically related to Patrick Vickers. I tapped the torn report scattered across the floor. That's different from proving that you're the people Patrick remembers. Adrian stared at me. His pregnant wife shifted uneasily beside him. Old Mr. Vickers suddenly grabbed my wrist. Doctor, don't let them take you. His voice dropped to a whisper. They know you're investigating. Adrian laughed awkwardly. See what I mean? But I noticed something else. His wife wasn't laughing. She was staring at Patrick with genuine fear. I turned toward her. Mrs. Vickers, how long have you been married to Adrian? She hesitated. 3 years. And before the accident? What accident? Adrian snapped. I looked at him. Your father said you and your mother were in an accident together a year ago. My father says a lot of things. That's not an answer. His jaw tightened. Maria stepped in. It was a minor accident. Nothing worth remembering. Then why does your husband remember it so clearly? I asked. Maria's face went pale. Adrian suddenly stepped forward. Doctor, enough. Old Mr. Vickers began pounding his fist against the sofa. You see. They don't want you asking questions. I turned toward him. Patrick, tell me exactly what happened after the accident. He swallowed. His trembling hand went to his temple. They came home 3 days later. Same faces, same voices, but wrong. What was wrong? Everything. He looked toward Maria. She called me Patrick. Maria's eyes widened. I always call you Patrick. No, he shouted. My wife called me sweetheart. She hadn't called me Patrick in 50 years unless she was angry. Maria immediately began crying. He's remembering nonsense. But Patrick continued. And Adrian walked through the hallway at night without turning on the lights. I looked at Adrian. Is that true? I'm 40 years old, doctor. Obviously, I can walk through a hallway without a nightlight. Your childhood medical record says you suffered severe panic attacks whenever you were in darkness. Adrian shrugged. People change. They do. I nodded. But personality changes don't happen in isolation. Adrian's eyes hardened. I noticed his wife staring at him. She looked as though she wanted to speak, but was terrified of doing so. I walked toward her. Mrs. Vickers, when was the last time you saw your husband's parents before the accident? She opened her mouth. Adrian answered for her. She was there. I didn't look at him. I asked her. The young woman's fingers trembled. She glanced at Adrian. He gave her a warning look. I don't remember. That answer bothered me more than anything else. A 3-year marriage should have thousands of memories. Yet she couldn't remember when she'd last seen her husband's parents. I asked, what was your wedding like? She swallowed. Small. Where? Silence. Adrian interrupted. Doctor, this is ridiculous. I turned back toward him. You don't remember your own wedding either? His face stiffened. Of course I do. Then tell me where it was. He hesitated. Only for a second, but I saw it. At the Vickers family home. Maria immediately said, no, it was at the country club. Adrian's head snapped toward her. The young wife's face went completely blank. 3 people. 3 answers. Old Patrick suddenly laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was the laugh of someone who had just watched a trap close. See, doctor? They don't know. Adrian lunged toward him. Dad. I stepped between them. Enough. Adrian stopped. His breathing was heavy. For the first time, I wasn't looking at a tired son caring for an Alzheimer's patient. I was looking at a man who was afraid of what his father might reveal. I told him I needed to speak with Patrick privately. Adrian objected immediately. That's not safe. I'm his doctor. He's unstable. Then I'll call the police if he becomes violent. That seemed to satisfy him. He reluctantly left with Maria and his wife. Once the door closed, Patrick grabbed both my hands. Dr. Sloan, listen carefully. I know you're beginning to believe me. I believe something is wrong. They're not my family. Then who are they? He stared toward the locked door. I don't know. When did you realize? The day they came home from the hospital. He leaned closer. But there was something else. What? His lips trembled. Before they came home, I went to the hospital. My heart skipped. Why? Because my wife called me. Maria called you? Yes. She whispered that she was afraid. What did she say? Patrick's eyes filled with tears. She said, Patrick, if I come home and I look exactly like me, don't trust me. I froze. What happened after that? The phone went dead. He stared at the floor. 3 days later, she came home. Did she remember making the call? She said she never called me. And Adrian? Same thing. Patrick's voice dropped. He told me he'd never been afraid of the dark. I thought about the medical record, the birthmark, the cilantro, the limp, the hallway light. Every detail sounded absurd separately. Together, they formed a pattern. I asked Patrick one final question. If you're right, where are your real wife and son? He looked directly into my eyes. That's what I've been trying to tell everyone. His fingers tightened around mine. They're still alive. I left the Vickers house with one thought pounding through my head. If Patrick's wife and son were alive, where were they? I drove straight back to the hospital and pulled up every available record involving Patrick Vickers, Maria Vickers, and Adrian Vickers. Their medical histories appeared ordinary. Too ordinary. There were routine appointments, vaccinations, surgeries, prescriptions, insurance claims. But when I compared the dates, I noticed something strange. Adrian's childhood records abruptly stopped when he was 17. His next medical record appeared 12 years later at age 29. That gap alone wasn't suspicious. People don't visit doctors regularly. But his handwriting on an old consent form was completely different from the handwriting on his recent documents. I called the medical records department. Can you verify the signatures on these? The clerk examined them. They belong to the same patient according to our database. I know what the database says. I'm asking whether the signatures look like the same person. There was a pause. No, my pulse quickened. Can you tell me who entered the newer records? Most were transferred electronically from an outside clinic. Which clinic? She gave me the name. I searched the clinic's records and found that it had closed 18 months earlier. That was when I noticed something even stranger. Every record for the Vickers family from the last 2 years had been transferred on the exact same day. I called the former clinic director. He initially refused to discuss patients, but after I explained that I was investigating a possible medical identity issue, he agreed to meet me. We sat in a coffee shop that afternoon. The doctor looked nervous. I remember the Vickers family. Do you remember Adrian? Of course. Did he have a limp? The doctor frowned. No. Was he afraid of the dark? Yes. Did he have a birthmark behind his ear? The doctor shook his head. No, but his father always insisted he did. My stomach tightened. What about Maria? Did she hate cilantro? The doctor stared at me. Why are you asking these bizarre questions? Because her husband says she did. He sighed. Patrick was obsessed with small details. He once accused me of being an imposter because I changed my glasses. Did you ever think he had Alzheimer's? Yes. He was diagnosed with early-stage Alzheimer's 2 years ago. How certain was the diagnosis? The doctor hesitated. Not as certain as I'd have liked. Why? His scans showed some changes, but not enough to explain the severity of his paranoia. That was exactly what I had suspected. Why didn't anyone investigate? Because the family insisted on managing him at home. He leaned closer. And after the accident, everything changed. What accident? The doctor looked around before answering. Maria and Adrian supposedly suffered a crash outside the city. Supposedly? There was no police report. My blood ran cold. What? They told me they'd been hit by a drunk driver. But when I asked for the accident report, Adrian said the police had lost it. Did either of them have serious injuries? Adrian supposedly injured his leg.
Maria had bruising.
And you examined them? Yes. Did the injuries match a car accident? He looked uncomfortable. No, I leaned forward. Then what did you think happened? He lowered his voice. I thought they'd been beaten. I stared at him. By whom? I don't know. He rubbed his forehead. There were bruises on their arms. Restraint marks. The room seemed to tilt. Why didn't you report it? Because Adrian told me they were from seatbelts. Seatbelts don't leave marks around both wrists. He didn't answer. I returned to the hospital and immediately pulled the emergency department records from the night of the supposed accident. There was no accident admission. No ambulance report. No trauma scan. Nothing. The only record was an administrative note stating that Adrian and Maria had been transferred from a private facility. The facility's name made my blood run cold. It was a psychiatric rehabilitation center. I searched the center's archived database. There was one admission matching the date. 2 patients had been admitted under temporary unidentified identities after being found unconscious near an abandoned industrial road. 1 male, 1 female, ages estimated around 40 and 70. The male had a leg injury. The female had facial bruising. Their photographs had been removed from the archive, but the fingerprints remained. I requested a comparison. 10 minutes later, the computer displayed the results. The female fingerprint matched Maria Vickers. The male fingerprint did not match Adrian Vickers. I stared at the screen. Then I checked the hospital database again. Adrian Vickers' fingerprints matched the man currently living in the Vickers house, but the unidentified male found at the industrial road was someone else. I searched his fingerprint through the national database. A name appeared. Daniel Vickers, Patrick's biological son. But according to every family record, Daniel Vickers had died at age 19 in a boating accident 21 years ago. I sat motionless. Daniel was dead. Yet his fingerprints had been found beside Maria Vickers 1 year ago. I called the rehabilitation center director. Where are the 2 patients now? His answer was quiet. The woman was discharged to a family member. Which family member? Her son, Adrian. That's what the paperwork says. And the man? Silence. Doctor, that patient disappeared. My heart began hammering. Disappeared? He left during the night. Did he have a name? He kept saying his name was Adrian. I felt the blood drain from my face. What did he look like? The director hesitated. He had a birthmark behind his ear. I immediately stood. Where's the center located? He gave me the address. It was less than 20 miles from the Vickers house. I drove there before sunset. The abandoned building was surrounded by weeds and broken fencing. Inside, I found an old security office. Most of the footage had been erased, but one backup drive remained. I watched the recording from the night the 2 unidentified patients disappeared. At 2:13 a.m., a man entered the hallway. He walked with a severe limp. He stopped outside the woman's room. She opened the door. They looked at each other. Then she whispered something. The man shook his head. She grabbed his hand. Together they walked toward the rear exit. Before leaving, the man turned toward the camera. I paused the footage. His face was blurred by the poor recording, but the profile was unmistakable. It was Adrian Vickers. Except this Adrian had no limp in the video. He was pretending. And just before the footage ended, I saw something else. A second man was waiting outside the building. He had the same face as Patrick's current son. I replayed the footage 3 times. 2 Adrians. One had been pretending to limp. The other had been pretending to be afraid of the dark. And somewhere between them was the truth about Patrick Vickers' family. I took photographs of the screen and returned to my car. I wanted to call the police, but I knew exactly what would happen. They had already responded to Patrick's house 99 times. They had probably heard every accusation imaginable. If I called and said there were 2 men who looked identical, one supposedly dead for 21 years, and an Alzheimer's patient might actually be identifying imposters, they would think I'd lost my mind too. So I called the one person I trusted to investigate without immediately dismissing the evidence. Detective Rowan Hale, an old acquaintance who specialized in missing person cases. I sent him the footage. He called me within 4 minutes. Where did you get this? A rehabilitation center outside the city. Sloan, this isn't normal. I know. The man in this footage resembles Adrian Vickers. Because he is Adrian Vickers. Then who is the other man? That's what I need you to find out. Rowan went quiet. Send me everything. I forwarded the hospital records, the fingerprint report, the accident discrepancies, and Patrick's statements. Then I drove back to the Vickers house. I didn't knock. I parked across the street and watched. Maria came outside first. She looked around before walking to the mailbox. Adrian followed. His limp was gone. He walked normally. I took a photograph. Then something strange happened. His pregnant wife came outside and whispered something to him. Adrian immediately grabbed her arm. She recoiled. He released her after noticing a neighbor watching. My stomach tightened. 20 minutes later, Maria left alone. I followed her. She drove to an old cemetery on the edge of town. She parked beside a weathered stone monument. I watched her walk toward a grave. I zoomed my camera in. The name on the grave was Daniel Vickers. She stood there for several minutes. Then she placed a photograph against the headstone. I waited until she left before approaching. The photograph showed a young man in his late teens. Behind his ear was a small red birthmark. I stared at the image. Daniel had the same birthmark Patrick had described on Adrian. I photographed the grave and the picture. Then I noticed something written on the back. You were never supposed to come home. I called Rowan. I found Daniel's grave. The dead son. Yes. Sloan, Daniel's death certificate is forged. I froze. What? I'm at the records office. His death certificate was filed 21 years ago, but the doctor who signed it died 3 years before Daniel supposedly died. I closed my eyes. Everything was connecting. Rowan, I think Daniel never died. Neither do I. Then who was buried here? We're going to find out. Before he could say anything else, I heard a noise behind me. I turned. Nobody. But when I looked back at Daniel's grave, the photograph was gone. Someone had taken it. I immediately stepped away. A figure moved between the trees. I chased him. He ran surprisingly fast. I followed until we reached the cemetery's rear gate. The man jumped into a waiting car and sped away. I managed to catch the license plate. Rowan traced it within minutes. The vehicle was registered to Adrian Vickers. I drove straight back to the house. This time I knocked. Maria opened the door. Dr. Sloan. Where's Adrian? She smiled nervously. He's upstairs. I need to speak with him. He's sleeping. Then wake him. Her smile disappeared. Why? Because I found Daniel's grave. Her face went completely white. I stepped inside. And I know the death certificate is fraudulent. Maria backed away. You shouldn't have gone there. Why? Because some things are better left buried. I stared at her. Is Daniel alive? She began trembling. Before she could answer, a voice came from upstairs. Mom. Maria looked toward the staircase. Adrian appeared at the top. But something was wrong. He wasn't limping. He wasn't smiling. He looked directly at me and said, Dr. Sloan, my father wasn't wrong. Maria whispered. Adrian, don't. He slowly walked downstairs. He's been telling the truth. I felt my pulse hammering. Which one are you? His eyes filled with tears. The real one. Maria turned toward him in horror. No, he continued. The man upstairs isn't my father. The woman downstairs isn't my mother. I stared at Maria. She began shaking her head. He's lying. Adrian looked at me. Doctor, my father recognized us because he was the only person who could. Then footsteps sounded upstairs. Heavy footsteps. The other Adrian appeared on the landing. He looked down at us with a smile. What a touching reunion. He held something in his hand. A knife. Maria screamed. Run. The lights went out. In the darkness, Patrick's voice suddenly echoed from upstairs. Dr. Sloan. I heard him shouting. The monster has found you. The lights went out. For 3 seconds, there was absolute darkness. Then something brushed against my cheek. I flinched backward and heard Patrick screaming from upstairs. Don't let him touch you. A blade struck the wall beside my head. I ducked and stumbled into the living room. Emergency lights from the street leaked through the curtains, giving the room a sickly gray glow. I could barely make out the figures around me. Maria was pressed against the wall. The younger Adrian stood between us and the staircase. Above him, another Adrian descended slowly, knife in hand. The worst part was his expression. He wasn't angry. He was smiling. Dr. Sloan, he said softly, you should never have come back. Who are you? I demanded. You already know. He stepped down another stair. Your patient told you. From upstairs came a violent crash. Patrick screamed again. He's wearing my son's face. The younger Adrian suddenly grabbed my arm. We have to get my father out. Which one is your father? The real one. He pointed upstairs. Patrick. Maria grabbed his sleeve. Adrian, we can't. Mom, we're out of time. I stared at her. You just called him Adrian. She looked at me with tears running down her face. Because he is. The man on the staircase laughed. Still pretending? He raised the knife. After all these years? Adrian shoved me behind him. Doctor, there's a room beneath the basement. My blood ran cold. What? That's where they kept us. Maria whispered. Don't tell her. She already knows too much. He looked toward the staircase. The basement isn't a basement. It's an old shelter. My father built it decades ago. Suddenly the man above rushed downward. Adrian pushed me aside and slammed into him. They crashed into the furniture. For one horrifying second, I watched 2 identical faces fighting under the dim streetlight. One had a faint scar above his eyebrow. The other didn't. One fought wildly. The other fought with terrifying precision. Maria screamed when the knife flashed. I grabbed a heavy lamp and struck the armed man's wrist. The knife clattered away. He turned toward me. His eyes were completely empty. Then he smiled. You really shouldn't have done that. He reached for me. Adrian tackled him through the doorway. They disappeared into the hallway. I heard furniture breaking, followed by a wet choking sound. Adrian, Maria cried. I ran after them. The hallway was empty. A trail of blood led toward the basement door. I froze. The blood wasn't red. Under the weak emergency light, it looked almost black. The basement door stood open. From below came a slow scraping noise. Drag, scrape, drag, scrape. Maria grabbed my shoulder. Don't go down there. Where's my son? Doctor, please. Where's Adrian? She began crying. I don't know anymore. I pushed the door open. The smell hit me first. Mold, rot, something metallic, something sweet underneath it. At the bottom of the stairs, the younger Adrian was kneeling beside Patrick. The old man was alive, but his shirt was soaked in blood. Dad, Adrian whispered. Patrick grabbed his face. His trembling fingers searched behind his ear. He found the birthmark and began sobbing. My boy. Then Patrick looked at me. Doctor, there are more. I swallowed. More what? His eyes shifted toward the darkness behind me. Faces. The scraping stopped. I turned. At the far end of the basement stood a row of old hospital stretchers. Each one had a body beneath a white sheet. 5, 6, 7. I couldn't tell. One sheet moved. I stepped backward. Who are they? Adrian whispered. People they replaced. Maria suddenly appeared at the bottom of the stairs. She looked utterly terrified. We have to leave. No, I said. You're going to explain. She shook her head violently. Not here. Patrick pointed at one of the covered bodies. Ask her what happened to the real Maria. Maria began crying. I am the real Maria. Patrick laughed bitterly. Then why did you bring her here? Maria looked at him. Because I had no choice. I pulled the sheet away from the nearest body. A woman's face stared back at me. Her skin was pale and waxy. Her eyes were open. There was a small red birthmark behind her ear. Maria screamed. Adrian staggered backward. Patrick whispered. That's her. I looked at Maria. Who is that? She couldn't answer. Then the corpse's fingers moved. I nearly dropped the sheet. The woman's lips parted. A thin breath escaped. Patrick, the old man, collapsed against Adrian. Maria. The woman on the stretcher was alive. Barely. Her eyes rolled toward me. Don't trust. Her voice broke into a wet cough. Don't trust the faces. Behind us, something slammed against the basement door. Once, twice, then a third time. The handle began turning. Adrian grabbed my arm. Doctor, we have to go. Your mother is here. That's not my mother. The woman on the stretcher suddenly screamed. Run. The basement door exploded inward. The other Adrian stood there. His face was splattered with blood. He looked at the injured woman and smiled. You were always difficult to kill. Then he looked directly at me. But now that you've found her, he stepped into the basement. We'll have to make you one of us too. I grabbed the nearest metal tray and swung it at the man's head. He ducked, and the tray smashed against the doorframe. Adrian pulled me toward the back of the basement while Maria rushed to the injured woman on the stretcher. Mom, Adrian cried. Leave her. Maria screamed. She's alive. That's exactly why we have to leave. He grabbed his mother's arm, but she fought him. I'm not leaving her again. The other Adrian walked toward us slowly. Blood dripped from his fingers onto the concrete floor. He wasn't rushing because he knew there was nowhere to go. You still don't understand, he said. Your mother isn't the only one downstairs. I looked toward the other stretchers. The sheets began moving, one after another. Something beneath them shifted. Then another. Then another. I heard fingernails scratching against metal. Adrian. I whispered. What is this place? His face had gone white. A storage room. For what? He didn't answer. The first sheet fell to the floor. A man sat upright. His face was covered in surgical scars. He stared directly at me. Doctor? I stepped backward. He smiled. You're late. Another body began moving. Then another. I realized they weren't corpses. They were people. Injured people. People who had been hidden here. Some were missing fingers. Some had stitches across their faces. One woman had half her hair shaved away, exposing a long surgical scar behind her ear. My stomach turned. Who did this? I whispered. Every survivor looked toward the staircase. The other Adrian stood there smiling. We did. Patrick suddenly shouted. No, they did. He pointed at the man on the stairs. They took my family. The man laughed. Your family was never as simple as you believed. He stepped closer. Do you know why Patrick noticed? I said nothing. Because Alzheimer's didn't erase his memories quickly enough. He tilted his head. It made him doubt himself. That was useful. I felt cold spread through me. You deliberately convinced him he was sick. Of course. Why? He smiled. Because nobody listens to a crazy old man. Adrian lunged at him. They collided again. This time I noticed something horrifying. The imposter didn't bleed when Adrian punched him. Adrian did. He's wearing something, I said. Maria stared at me. What? His face. I stepped closer despite the danger. The skin around his jaw is moving. The imposter stopped fighting. His smile disappeared. He slowly touched his cheek. Then he began laughing. Dr. Sloan, you're very observant. He grabbed the edge of his jaw and pulled. The skin stretched. Maria screamed. Adrian froze. The man's face wasn't simply a mask. Beneath the skin was another face. Younger. Different. He peeled away a section near his cheek, revealing a dark layer underneath. It looked wet and raw. I staggered backward. What are you? He smiled through the half-removed face. Someone who learned that people trust a familiar face more than the truth. Patrick began sobbing. That's not my son. No, the man said. I'm not. He ripped the artificial skin completely from one side of his face. Underneath was a scarred stranger. Maria pulled Adrian behind her. Doctor, run. The imposter suddenly grabbed a lighter. He held it against the white sheets covering the stretchers. If I can't have them, nobody will. The fabric caught fire. Flames raced across the basement. Smoke filled the room. No, Maria screamed. Adrian grabbed the injured woman while I helped Patrick toward the stairs. The survivors scattered in panic. The imposter disappeared into the smoke. Then I heard a child's voice. Mommy? I stopped. There were no children here. The voice came from behind one of the shelves. Mommy, please open the door. Maria looked at me in terror. Don't. The voice came again. Mommy, I'm cold. Adrian whispered. That's not a child. The basement door slammed shut above us. We were trapped. Fire spread across the ceiling. I looked around desperately and spotted a narrow steel door behind the stretchers. I kicked it. Locked. Adrian helped me. Together we slammed against it until the hinges broke. We stumbled into a narrow tunnel. Patrick crawled behind us. Maria dragged the injured woman. The screams from the basement followed us. Then came a horrible sound. Someone was laughing. We ran deeper into the tunnel until we reached another door. Adrian opened it. We emerged inside an abandoned house across the street. I looked back through the doorway. The tunnel was completely dark. Where does this lead? I asked. Adrian stared at the house. My father's old workshop. Patrick suddenly grabbed my coat. Doctor. What? We have to go. Why? He pointed toward the window. Across the street, the vicar's house was burning. And standing in front of the flames was the imposter. He was holding a little girl's hand. The girl looked directly at us. Then she smiled. Daddy, she said. I found them. The little girl waved at us from across the street. She couldn't have been more than 8 years old. Her dress was stained with soot, and one side of her face was hidden beneath a curtain of tangled hair. I stared at her hand. The imposter was holding it gently, almost affectionately. Daddy, she repeated. I found them. Patrick's entire body began shaking. No, Adrian grabbed my shoulder. Don't look at her. Who is she? I whispered. I don't know. You know something. Adrian swallowed. I've seen her before. The girl tilted her head. You don't remember me? Adrian went pale. She lifted her free hand and pointed at the scar behind his ear. You used to carry me. Maria suddenly covered her mouth. Emily. The girl's smile widened. Mommy remembers. I looked at Maria. Who is Emily? Maria's eyes filled with tears. My granddaughter. You have a granddaughter? Had. Her voice cracked. She died. The girl across the street giggled. I didn't die. Patrick stumbled backward. Emily died 20 years ago. No, Maria whispered. No, no, no. The little girl started walking toward us. The imposter followed behind her. Adrian pulled me deeper into the workshop. We need to leave. Your mother says that girl died 20 years ago. Because she did. Then who is that? He didn't answer. The girl stopped outside the burning house. Flames reflected in her eyes, yet she didn't seem frightened. She slowly raised her hand. In her palm was a tiny gold ring. Maria screamed. That was Emily's. The ring had been buried with her. I could see the tiny initials engraved inside. Evie. Patrick began muttering. They brought her back. Who did? I asked. He stared at the girl. The people who make the faces. Suddenly the imposter shouted. Run. The girl turned toward him. Her smile disappeared. You promised. The imposter froze. Emily, you promised you'd bring my mother back. The man's expression changed. I will. You lied. She released his hand. He immediately grabbed her wrist. Come here. She screamed. The sound was so piercing that every window in the workshop shattered. I covered my ears. Adrian dropped to his knees. Patrick collapsed. Then the girl looked directly at me. Doctor. I couldn't move. Help me. The imposter dragged her toward the burning house. I ran outside. Adrian followed. Doctor, wait. We crossed the street as smoke poured around us. The man disappeared through the front door with Emily. They're inside. Adrian shouted. Then we're going in. Are you insane? She's a child. I pushed through the doorway. Heat blasted my face. The living room was engulfed in flames. I heard Emily crying upstairs. Adrian followed me. We climbed the staircase as smoke filled our lungs. Halfway up, we saw photographs covering the walls. Family photographs. Patrick, Maria, Adrian, Daniel, Emily, dozens of them. But something was wrong. In every photograph, one person's face had been scratched out. Doctor. Adrian pointed. A photograph showed Patrick standing beside two sons, Daniel and Adrian. Both boys had the same red birthmark behind their ears. I stared. You had a brother. Yes. You told me Daniel died. That's what they told us. We reached the upstairs hallway. Emily was standing at the end. The imposter was gone. Emily, I called. She pointed toward a bedroom. He's making mommy. We rushed inside. The room was filled with surgical equipment, metal tables, medical instruments, masks, containers filled with liquid. And hanging from the ceiling were dozens of human face molds. Some were old. Some looked freshly made. In the center of the room stood a woman strapped to a table. Her face was covered in blood. She looked at Adrian. Son. Adrian stopped breathing. Mom. The woman began sobbing. Adrian. Maria appeared behind us and screamed. That's me. I looked between the two women. The woman on the table looked exactly like Maria. Same wrinkles. Same eyes. Same gold wedding ring. The woman who had come with us stared at her. That's impossible. The injured woman from the basement suddenly appeared in the doorway. She looked at the two Marias and whispered. There were always two. Patrick stumbled into the room. His eyes locked onto the woman on the table. He began crying. My wife. Maria stepped backward. Patrick, I'm your wife. He shook his head. No, he pointed toward the table. She's the one who hates cilantro. Maria covered her mouth. Then the woman on the table whispered. Patrick, I still hate it. He collapsed. I knew it. The imposter appeared behind us. He slammed the door shut and locked it. Congratulations, Dr. Sloan. He smiled. You finally found the real family. He looked at the two identical women. Now, let's see which one survives. The imposter pulled a small remote from his pocket. A metallic click sounded beneath the table. The restraints around the real Maria tightened until she cried out. Stop, I shouted. Let her go. He smiled. Why? You're the doctor. Surely you can determine which woman is genuine. He pointed toward the two Marias. One is his wife. One is a replacement. One has lived 70 years with Patrick. The other has spent years learning how to imitate her. The woman beside Patrick began shaking her head. Don't listen to him. Then prove it, I said. She stared at me. How? Tell me something only Maria Vickers would know. She immediately answered. Our first apartment had a blue door. The woman on the table whispered. Green. Patrick suddenly looked up. Green. The woman beside him went pale. Patrick. He slowly turned away from her. The imposter laughed. Interesting. I stepped closer to the woman on the table. What did Patrick give you on your 50th anniversary? A gold ring. She looked toward her husband. And he took me dancing in the kitchen because the restaurant reservation was cancelled. Patrick began crying. She remembers. The other Maria backed toward the door. That's because she studied us. Then what did I burn? Patrick asked. The woman on the table smiled through her tears. Your old brown suit. You spilled wine on it and tried to hide it in the laundry room. Patrick covered his face. That's my wife. The imposter's smile vanished. He pressed the remote again. The table began sliding backward toward a large steel cabinet. No. Adrian charged him. The imposter swung a metal instrument at his head. Adrian ducked, grabbed his wrist, and slammed him against the wall. They fought violently. The fake Maria screamed and ran for the exit. Emily stood in front of her. You're not mommy. The woman stopped. Her face twisted. Move. You're not mommy, Emily repeated. Mommy always kisses me twice before bed. The woman's expression changed. Emily, you only kissed me once. The girl stepped backward. You forgot. The woman lunged. I caught her arm. Her skin felt strangely cold. She hissed and scratched my wrist. A strip of skin peeled away beneath her fingernails. I stared at it in horror. Underneath wasn't normal skin. There was a thin, translucent material, almost like silicone, stretched over something dark. Oh God. She smiled. You finally see me. She grabbed my throat. Adrian tackled her. Her face twisted as he pulled at her hair. The entire facial layer shifted sideways. Emily screamed. That's not mommy. The imposter suddenly broke free and ran toward the woman. Get out, he shouted. They're coming. Who? I yelled. He looked toward the hallway. Then we heard footsteps. Dozens of footsteps. They were coming from the staircase. Heavy. Slow. Inhumanly synchronized. The imposter's confidence disappeared. They're here. Who? I demanded again. He didn't answer. The door burst open. 3 men entered wearing identical dark coats. Their faces were completely expressionless. Behind them came a woman who looked exactly like the fake Maria. Then another. Then another. My stomach dropped. They weren't wearing masks. They were wearing faces. Dozens of them. Copies of Patrick's family. One had Adrian's face. Another had Maria's. Another had Daniel's. One even had Emily's face. Patrick stared at them and began screaming. They're multiplying. The men advanced. The real Maria cried. Patrick, don't look. But it was too late. One of the copies spoke in Patrick's voice. You should have stayed quiet. Patrick grabbed his chest. I caught him before he fell. Dad. Adrian shouted. The room erupted into chaos. The imposter grabbed Emily and ran. No. Adrian chased him. I helped Patrick toward the table while the real Maria struggled against her restraints. One of the copies approached us. I grabbed a syringe from the surgical tray and stabbed it into his neck. He stopped. His expression remained completely blank. Then he slowly looked down at the syringe and smiled. That won't work. He pulled it out. Black fluid seeped from the puncture. I froze. What are you? He leaned toward me. We are what happens when a family becomes more useful dead than alive. Behind him, Patrick whispered something. Doctor. What? Look at their ears. I stared. Every copy had a small red birthmark behind the right ear. Every single one. Patrick's hands trembled. That's how they mark them. The real Maria suddenly shouted. No. Patrick, don't tell her. I looked at her. Mark who? She closed her eyes. Children. The word echoed through the room. Then Emily screamed from somewhere downstairs. Mommy. Adrian's voice followed. Doctor. Help. I ran toward the door. The copies didn't stop me. They simply watched. As I reached the stairs, the lights flickered on. Every hallway mirror reflected the same face. Mine. I stopped dead. In the mirror, my reflection smiled. I didn't. I stared at the mirror. My reflection was smiling at me while my actual face remained frozen. Then it raised one hand. I didn't. It pressed its palm against the glass. A second later, something pressed back from my side. I stumbled away. Doctor. Adrian shouted from downstairs. I forced myself to move. I ran down the staircase and found him kneeling beside Emily. She was curled against the wall, trembling violently. Where's the imposter? Gone. Adrian pointed toward the basement entrance. He took my mother. I looked at Emily. Where's the other woman? She pointed toward the hallway. She went after him. Which one? Emily's face crumpled. I don't know. A scream came from beneath the house. Adrian immediately grabbed a flashlight. We have to go. Your father is upstairs. My father is safe with my mother. I looked at him. Are you sure? He stopped. His face slowly changed. What do you mean? Because there are 2 Mariahs upstairs. He went silent. Emily whispered. And there are 2 Adrians. Adrian looked at her. What? She pointed behind him. I turned. At the top of the staircase stood another Adrian. He was staring down at us. His face was covered in blood. He smiled. The Adrian beside me whispered. Don't move. The copy tilted his head. You always were slow. Adrian grabbed a fireplace poker. Stay behind me. The copy descended 1 step. You know what I remember? He asked. The bunker. Adrian's grip tightened. I remember falling into it when I was 7. No, the copy said. You remember being told you fell. Adrian's face went pale. What happened? I asked. The copy smiled. He didn't fall. He pointed at Patrick's son. He was pushed. Adrian stared at him. By whom? The copy's smile widened. By your brother. A noise came from the basement. 3 slow knocks. Knock, knock, knock. Emily suddenly covered her ears. He's calling us. Who's calling you? I asked. Grandpa. Patrick's voice echoed through the house. Emily. I looked toward the ceiling. Patrick is upstairs. Emily shook her head. That's not Grandpa. The copy laughed. She can hear them. Hear who? The ones beneath the house. He suddenly sprinted down the stairs. Adrian swung the poker. The copy ducked and slammed him into the wall. I grabbed Emily and ran toward the basement. Doctor. Adrian shouted. Go. We reached the bottom. The tunnel is different now. The walls were covered with photographs. Hundreds of them. Families. Children. Couples. Every photograph had someone's face scratched out. In the center of the tunnel was a steel door. Emily stopped. That's where they keep them. Keep who? The originals. She pointed toward the door. People whose faces they steal. My stomach twisted. Adrian unlocked it with a key hanging around his neck. Where did you get that? My mother gave it to me. The door opened. The smell inside was unbearable. The room contained rows of glass chambers. People were trapped inside them. Some were unconscious. Others stared blankly through the glass. Several had bandages covering their faces. One chamber was empty. Another held a teenage boy. He looked almost exactly like Adrian. Same eyes. Same jaw. Same birthmark. Adrian stopped breathing. Daniel? The boy slowly opened his eyes. Adrian. Adrian approached the glass. Daniel? The boy smiled weakly. You're alive. So are you. Daniel's expression collapsed. No, he pressed his hand against the glass. I'm not. Adrian touched the other side. What do you mean? Daniel whispered. I'm the copy. Adrian stepped backward. What? Daniel pointed toward another chamber. Inside was a man who looked exactly like Patrick Vickers 30 years younger. That's the real Daniel. I stared at the chamber. The man inside opened his eyes. He looked directly at Adrian. Then he mouthed 3 words. Don't trust Maria. Adrian turned toward me. Which Maria? Before I could answer, the lights inside the facility switched on. Every chamber opened simultaneously. The people inside began walking out. Dozens of them. Some looked like strangers. Others looked like people I'd already seen upstairs. Then I saw her. A woman wearing a hospital gown walked toward us. She had my face. I couldn't breathe. She stopped directly in front of me. Dr. Sloan, she whispered. I've been waiting for you. Adrian grabbed my arm. That's impossible. She smiled. No, she reached behind her ear. There was a tiny red birthmark. You just haven't remembered me yet. Then she leaned closer and whispered. You were here before. I stared at the woman wearing my face. I've never seen you before. She smiled. That's what they wanted you to believe. Adrian pulled me behind him. Don't listen to her. She laughed. You still protect her? After everything? Who are you? I demanded. Her expression softened. The doctor who came here 7 years ago. My stomach dropped. That's impossible. You investigated a patient who claimed his family had been replaced. You found this facility. You saw what they were doing. She touched the side of her face. Then they erased you. I shook my head. I would remember. They didn't erase your memories. They replaced them. Before I could answer, alarms erupted throughout the facility. Red lights flashed. Every person released from the chambers began running toward the exits. Adrian grabbed Daniel's chamber door and forced it open. The real Daniel stumbled out, barely able to stand. We have to leave, he gasped. They're coming. Who? Everyone. A gunshot echoed from the corridor. Then another. The imposters stormed into the room. They weren't trying to capture anyone anymore. They were killing the escaped patients. Move, Adrian shouted. We ran. I grabbed Daniel while Adrian carried Emily. Behind us, screams echoed through the tunnels. We reached the elevator, but the doors opened before anyone touched the button. Inside stood Maria. Both Marias. They looked identical. One was covered in blood. The other was holding a knife. Daniel whispered, "The one on the left is fake." Both women immediately pointed at him. "He's lying." I looked at their hands. The real Maria wore her old gold wedding ring. The fake wore an identical copy. Then I remembered Patrick's anniversary story. "What did Patrick call you when you were angry?" asked the woman on the left. She answered immediately, "Patrick." The woman on the right hesitated. "Sweetheart." Patrick had said Maria only called him Patrick when she was angry. The woman on the left smiled. "Good question." She pulled a tiny blade from her sleeve and attacked.
He shocked Daniel sight.
Adrian tackled her into the elevator wall. The fake woman's face split at the cheek. Skin peeled away like wet paper. Beneath it was the same scarred stranger we'd seen before. Maria grabbed my hand. "Run." We escaped through a maintenance corridor. Behind us, the imposter screamed, "You can't leave the facility. Your records are here." We kept running until we reached a steel exit door. Adrian kicked it open. Cold night air hit my face. We emerged behind the old vicar's workshop. Police sirens were approaching. Rowan Hale stepped out of a vehicle with armed officers behind him. "Sloan." I nearly collapsed with relief. "Rowan, there's an entire facility underneath this property." "We know." He held up a stack of photographs. "We've been digging into the vicar's family for hours." "It's bigger than the vicar's family." I figured. He looked at Daniel. His expression changed. "Who is that?" Daniel answered weakly, "The son they buried." Rowan stared. "Daniel Vickers?" "Yes." Then another police officer ran toward us. "Detective, we found the house." "What about the people inside?" "They're gone. All of them. Everyone." Rowan cursed. "That's impossible." We surrounded the building. I looked back toward the workshop. The windows were dark. They didn't leave through the doors. Rowan stared at me. "Then how?" Before I could answer, Emily began screaming. She pointed behind us. "They're here." We turned. Nothing. Then every streetlight shut off at once. Darkness swallowed the entire road. A woman's voice whispered from somewhere nearby. "Dr. Sloan." I recognized it. My own voice. "You forgot us." The police raised their weapons. Something moved between the trees. Then another shape. Then dozens. Identical faces appeared in the darkness. Maria grabbed Patrick's hand. Daniel stepped beside Adrian. Rowan shouted. Everyone stay together. A flashlight flickered on. It illuminated a single woman standing in the road. She had my face. Then another appeared beside her. Then another. Then 10. 20. 50. They all smiled simultaneously. The woman closest to me lifted her hand and pointed toward the hospital. "You should have remembered sooner." My phone suddenly rang. I answered without thinking. There was static. Then my own voice whispered through the speaker. "Dr. Sloan, the first replacement has already arrived at the hospital." My blood went cold. Rowan heard it. "What did they say?" I looked at him. "They're already inside." We raced toward the cars. As I climbed in, I saw something on the dashboard. A photograph. It showed me standing in the Vickers facility 7 years earlier. Beside me stood another doctor. On the back, written in my handwriting, were 5 words. "If I forget, kill me." Rowan grabbed the photograph. "Sloan, what the hell is this?" "I don't know." "You do now." He pointed to the words on the back. "If I forget, kill me." Before we could process it, every phone in the car rang at once. Rowan answered his. A distorted voice whispered, "She's awake." The call ended. Then the hospital's emergency alarm appeared on Rowan's dispatch screen. Multiple floors had lost power. Patients were wandering into hallways. Several nurses were missing. We raced there. The moment we entered the emergency department, I knew it was wrong. Every nurse at the desk was staring at us. Every single one had the same expression. Then one smiled. "Dr. Sloan, you're back." Rowan drew his weapon. "Back from where?" Nobody answered. The lights flickered. A patient crawled from a treatment room. His face was covered in blood. He grabbed my coat. "They're replacing everyone." Then his eyes widened. "Including you." I pulled away. A nurse suddenly lunged. Rowan fired into the ceiling. Everybody down. The imposters scattered. We ran toward the surgical wing. I knew where they were taking someone. The morgue. Rowan stared. "Why?" "Because that's where they can hide bodies." We reached the morgue and found 6 corpses laid out on tables. 5 were hospital employees. The 6th was me. Same face. Same hair. Same clothes. Same birthmark behind the ear. I couldn't breathe. Rowan stared at the corpse, then at me. "Sloan," I whispered. "That's impossible." The corpse suddenly opened its eyes. "You were supposed to die here 7 years ago." Then it sat upright. I stumbled backward. "Who are you?" It smiled. "I'm you." The real me, the one standing there, felt suddenly uncertain. I touched my face. The skin was warm. The reflection in the morgue window smiled again. My reflection whispered without moving its lips. "Which one of us do you think they'll believe?" Rowan grabbed my shoulders. "Sloan, look at me." I did. "You're you." "How do you know?" He froze. Then the corpse laughed. "He doesn't." Behind Rowan, every morgue drawer began sliding open, one after another. Faces stared out from the darkness. Doctors, nurses, police officers, children. All of them had my face. Then Patrick's voice came from the hallway. "Dr. Sloan." I turned. Patrick stood there with Maria and Adrian. But all 3 were smiling. Rowan raised his weapon. "Don't move." Patrick's smile vanished. "You shouldn't have brought him here." Adrian stepped forward. "He'll remember now." My head began pounding. Images flashed through my mind. The Vickers facility, a surgical room, a woman screaming, my own hands covered in blood, and myself writing the warning on the photograph. Then I remembered the final thing I'd forgotten. I hadn't been investigating the facility 7 years ago. I had been working there, and I hadn't gone there to expose them. I had gone there to become one of them. The memory hit me so violently that I dropped to my knees. 7 years earlier, I hadn't been Dr. Sloan, the investigator. I had been one of the doctors running the facility. We weren't creating perfect human copies. We were creating replacements using stolen identities, memories, and biological material. The Vickers family had discovered us after Daniel survived an attempted replacement. Patrick had seen enough to realize what was happening, so we made him the perfect scapegoat. We diagnosed him with Alzheimer's, convinced everyone that his accusations were delusions, and slowly replaced the people around him. But Maria and Adrian fought back. They escaped. They found the facility, and I had helped them. When I tried to expose everything, they caught me. They didn't kill me. They erased the parts of my memory that could identify them and implanted a false life. I looked at the corpse on the table. You're the replacement. It smiled. I'm what you were supposed to become. Rowan lowered his weapon. Sloan, tell me what you remember. Everything. I stood. The facility. The experiments. The children. My eyes moved toward Patrick. And the real reason he kept calling them monsters. Patrick nodded. He knew they weren't human replacements. He knew they were copies that could steal memories. The imposters began surrounding us. Rowan raised his gun. How do we stop them? I looked at the surgical equipment. Destroy the memory archive. The archive contained every identity they had stolen. Without it, the copies couldn't maintain their implanted memories. We ran toward the underground server room while the imposters chased us. Adrian stayed behind with Patrick and Maria. Rowan and I reached the archive. I connected my old access card. The system recognized me immediately. Welcome back, Dr. Sloan. A final message appeared. Primary identity restoration complete. I smiled bitterly. It remembers me. Rowan looked at me. Can you destroy it? Yes. I activated the purge. Every screen filled with photographs of stolen identities. Then the facility began screaming. Not people. The building itself seemed to scream as alarms and speakers malfunctioned. The copies staggered through the corridors, clutching their heads. Their borrowed memories were disappearing. Some collapsed. Others began tearing at their faces. The fake Adrian fell to his knees. Please. The artificial skin on his face loosened. I don't want to forget. I stared at him. You stole someone else's life, he whispered. I was someone's life too. Then the archive exploded. The facility went dark. When police entered, they found dozens of survivors and hundreds of identity records. The Vickers family finally had proof. Patrick's real wife, Maria, survived. Adrian survived. Daniel survived. Emily survived too, though she was never the same after discovering what had been done to her family. The imposters who remained alive were arrested. The facility became the biggest identity fraud and illegal human experimentation case in the country's history. Patrick's Alzheimer's diagnosis was eventually revised. He had cognitive impairment, but his accusations had been based on real events. The police officer who had answered his 99th emergency call apologized to him personally. Patrick only smiled and said, "You believed I was crazy." The officer lowered his head. I was wrong. Months later, I returned to medicine. I still had nightmares. Sometimes I'd wake up convinced someone was standing beside my bed wearing my face. But I kept working. I couldn't undo what I'd done 7 years earlier, but I could spend the rest of my life helping the people we'd harmed. One afternoon, Patrick visited my office with Maria, Adrian, Daniel, and Emily. Patrick placed an old photograph on my desk. It was the picture I'd found in my car. On the back, the warning had been crossed out. Beneath it someone had written, "You remembered. That's enough." I looked at Patrick. Who changed it? He smiled. I did. Emily giggled. Grandpa says you're finally a good doctor. Everyone laughed. I looked at the family sitting together. For the first time, every face in the room belonged to the person it was supposed to belong to. Then my phone buzzed. An unknown message appeared. One copy survived. I stared at the screen. Adrian noticed my expression. Doctor? I slowly turned the phone face down. Nothing. Outside the window, a woman walked past. She stopped, turned toward my office, and smiled. She had my face. I watched her disappear into the crowd. Then I smiled too, because this time, I remembered exactly who I was.